Welcome to Kubrick Quest Episode 4. Today we'll be talking about Stanley Kubrick's 1957 film Paths of Glory. Like a number of Stanley Kubrick's other films, this was based on a novel written by Humphrey Cobb in 1935, also called Paths of Glory. I've never seen this movie before. I've known about it, but this was really my first time watching it. And damn, it was grim. Dark, I wasn't ready for it. I mean, there was a part of me that, in the back of my mind, was kind of hoping that towards the climax, something's going to happen. There's going to be like some legal loophole. These guys are going to get saved, or they're going to break out of the prison or something. And then they all just get shot and die. And I'm like, God damn. But, that is the point. It's not a feel-good summer comedy like Dude, Where's My Car? It's an anti-war movie, and a very serious one at that, and my God, did they succeed. Makes war look pretty not fun. The original Paths of Glory novel and Stanley Kubrick's movie were based on a real-life World War I event in which a French general ordered that his own troops be executed for refusing to go on what was essentially a suicide mission. There was this German position that the French wanted to take. They sent a first wave of troops. After seeing the whole first wave get slaughtered, the second wave said, well, I'm not doing that. And the general was so mad about this, he even ordered that his artillery division start sending shells at his own people to force them out into the battlefield so they could start the attack.
0+1 and they're still in the trenches. They're not advancing. Those miserable cowards. They're not advancing. The barrage is getting away from them. They're still in the trenches. Yes, sir. Order the 75s to commence firing on our own positions. Captain, do you fail to comprehend the meaning of my order?
The French general had 24 of his men put on a military tribunal court, and all 24 of those were sentenced to death by execution for refusing to obey orders. 20 of those men were put on stay of execution, which means it didn't actually happen. They didn't actually get executed. But 4 of those were. 4 of his own men were shot to death for refusing to go out into the battlefield and get killed. Bit of irony there. And apparently one of the men that was actually executed was one of the best soldiers in his division, and he was just chosen by random. I was initially bummed out that it's raining today, but I guess my day's not that bad. After the modest success of Stanley Kubrick's previous movie, The Killing, Stanley Kubrick and his business partners were looking for a new script for him to turn to a movie. And they were having a pretty hard time, couldn't find anything. And then Kubrick remembered the Paths of Glory novel that he read as a kid. So he remembered it decades later, and I think it obviously had a great impact on him because he wanted to turn into a movie, but I think the novel's strong anti-war sentiments really left an impression on him because anti-war is a theme in a lot of Kubrick movies. They were apparently having a hard time getting it actually greenlit by a studio. Not too surprising given the really dark, grim subject matter of the plot. It's not like some movie you would see in the 50s picturing a happy family like, come on, Marcia, load the kids into the Studebaker. We're going to go down to the picture show and see the new Stanley Kubrick movie. I'm also going to guess that the time this movie was made, 1957, plays a bigger role in the context of why it didn't get made. Because if you think about it, World War II wasn't that long ago. Picture in your mind just any other random war movie from the late 50s. Probably has some semblance of a happy ending and a bit of patriotism in there, a bit of gung-ho attitude, like we're going to pull through and win this for our people. Yeah, that's not this movie. And this is best exemplified by this one quote in the movie.
Patriotism may be old-fashioned, but show me a patriot and I'll show you an honest man.
Well, not everyone has always thought so. Samuel Johnson had something else to say about patriot.
And what was that, may I ask?
Well, nothing really.
What do you mean, nothing really?
Well, sir, nothing really important.
Colonel, when I ask a question, it's always important. Now, who is this man?
Samuel Johnson, sir.
All right, now, what did he have to say about patriotism?
He said it was the last refuge of a scoundrel, sir. I'm sorry, I meant nothing personal.
It really puts things into perspective from their point of view because, why even care about your country in that situation when they'll put you to death just as easily as the enemies would? maybe they wouldn't have had as a hard time making this movie if they wanted to get it released in like the 60s or the 70s with all the Social Unrest. I mean, there were plenty of anti-war type of movies that came out in that time. Take 1967, 10 years previous, 1957, and the attitude was so different. They could barely get this anti-war movie greenlit. Thankfully, Kubrick pitched the movie to the actor Kirk Douglas, who was really moved by the script's message and felt that it was something important that needed to be told. He was essentially able to get them a bigger budget and a major studio backing. Originally, when they wrote the screenplay for this, there was a happier ending, or slightly happy ending. I don't know, because I don't know what it's about, but I just read that the ending was supposed to be happier than it was in the movie, but Kirk Douglas was the one who wanted it to stick to the original really dark ending of the book. The bad guy of this movie, and I put bad guy in quotes because, they were all on the same side. They were all in the French army, but this guy was really essentially the villain of the movie. His name was General Miro, or Moreau. It's a French name. I'm going to mess it up, so just forgive it. Let's call him Moreau. I don't know. Miro. Something like that. General Miro was the guy who ordered his own men executed. He actually initially pushed back when his superior told him to take that German position.
Paul, I have formal orders to take the anthill no later than the 10th, that's the day after tomorrow. If there's one man in this army who can do this for me, it's you.
It's out of the question, George. Absolutely out of the question. My division was cut to pieces. What's left of it is in no position to even hold the anthill, let alone take it. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. George, I'm responsible for the lives of 8,000 men. My men come first of all, George. The life of one of those soldiers means more to me than all the stars and decorations and honors in France.
Until he learned that if the mission was successful, there would likely be a promotion for himself.
Talk around headquarters is that you are being considered for the 12th Corps.
The 12th Corps?
Yes, and with that another star. 12th Corps needs a fighting general, and you're overdue in that star. So, you think this attack is absolutely beyond the ability of your men at this time?
I didn't say that, George. Nothing is beyond those men once their fighting spirit is aroused.
I knew that I was right to come to you. You are the man to take the anthill.
General Miro was all full speed ahead with this plan that would lead to hundreds, probably thousands of his own men dead, just because he thought that, hey, if it worked, I might get another badge on my shoulder. If you could remake this in a modern corporate setting, General Moreau would be a really selfish, self-serving middle manager type of person. Just wants to look good to his superiors, keep his job, and get even more power. Meanwhile, the soldiers that he commands are just interested in not dying. It's also kind of disheartening when you realize how expendable the average soldier is to the higher-ups.
He's a bit shell-shocked. I beg your pardon, Sergeant. There is no such thing as shell-shock. Have you got a wife, soldier?
My wife? My wife? Yes, I have a wife. I'm never going to see her again. I'm going to be killed.
Get a grip on yourself. You're acting like a coward.
I am a coward, sir.
Snap out of it, soldier. Sergeant, I want you to arrange for the immediate transfer of this baby out of my regiment. I won't have other brave men contaminated by him.
That should keep him quiet long enough. That's a nasty skull fracture, though. He may not live out the night.
What are we supposed to do with him?
My advice is to tie him to a stretcher so he won't slip when you tilt it vertically.
Surely they won't execute a man in that condition.
I'm sorry, Father. The sentence will be carried out. I've already checked with the general on it. If he's still alive in the morning, pinch his cheeks a couple of times before you take him out on the field. It may make him open his eyes. The general wants him to be conscious.
Surely they won't execute a man in that condition.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Besides Kirk Douglas defending the soldiers, there were probably other of those higher-up guys in that room who really disagreed with what was going on. I'm sure a number of those people saw just how terrible this whole thing was, but did nothing about it, and that really just ties into the dark, terrible nature of this whole situation. Why would any of those people speak up if they see what the consequences are for disobedience? I also like how the German position the French were trying to take was called the anthill, because it really highlights how small and meaningless the whole mission they were trying to accomplish was. Puts things in perspective, scale. They're like ants.
Lights red.
Switching backup circuit.
Roger. Backup circuit switched in, still making it function.
Engage emergency power.
Roger.
One of my favorite examples of this was in the very beginning of the movie when you see this big palace, this big elaborate French chateau kind of place that All the generals are in, all the higher ups are in. It's a life of luxury. You got these lines of guys outside. It's clean, it's orderly, it's spacious. They do a lot of really wide shots here, showing just how big the rooms are that they're having this conversation in. But then when they cut to Kirk Douglas and the guys down in the trenches, it's tight. Everything is tight there. You could probably do a longer, wider shot of the trenches to show the scale of it, but that's not the point. That's not what he was trying to show. He's trying to just really highlight the difference between where they are and where these guys are. Some of the more famous moments from this movie include the trial scene. The execution scene was really dramatic. But one scene that I want to talk about, and that's particularly famous from this movie, was the big battle scene. There's a big field that Kubrick and the production team rented out from this farmer. And it took them over a month to set up because they made it look like a realistic World War I battlefield where, the landscape is pockmarked with craters from the artillery shells. And there's just rubble and dirt and barbed wire everywhere. And this scene is famous for, well, just about everything about it. It's crazy. This big battle scene is composed of several long, continuous tracking shots that follow the characters across the battlefield, and it really makes the viewer feel like you're there with them going across the field in real time. Kind of reminds me of the movie Birdman in a way, because there's some careful places where they do a cutaway and then come back to the wider shots, making it seem like it's one big fluid thing. If you don't know that, you might not even notice it the first time you watch it. I read that they used about 600 extras for the scene. Those extras were German police officers because they had a military background. They had some training, so they knew how to act like soldiers. Another aspect of the scene that I thought was interesting was that there's no music playing throughout. Instead, the sound effects take center stage. It was just a giant wave of roaring war noises, explosions, screaming, footsteps, gunshots. It had everything. And it was just like max volume throughout the whole thing, which also really added to you feeling like you're there with them, because it's probably just so deafening, everything that's going on, that's actually kind of confusing. One of the interesting things that I noticed was that this soldier, that's the racist sniper guy from The Killing.
Something wrong? You're wrong, Nick. Now be a nice guy and go on about your business.
This actor, whose name is Timothy Carey, was apparently very difficult to work with. He was disruptive and tried to do things to get his character more attention. Just according to Wikipedia, his antics made him reshoot the final meal scene of The Prisoners 57 times. I would be annoyed at that guy. He even faked his own kidnapping to hopefully drum up some publicity for himself and the movie. So, yeah, these antics prompted Kubrick to fire his ass. Luckily, they filmed pretty much everything they needed him for before they had to can him. But there's some shots where if you look carefully, you could tell that they're not showing his face. It's supposed to be him, but it's not him. It's a body double in his clothing. And I'm pretty sure that this is one of those shots here. This shot here, this is obviously a dummy dressed in soldier's clothing. It's just a bunch of explosives they put the clothes over. I don't think it was supposed to be seen on modern HD computer screens like this where I can just go frame by frame and say, hey, wait, that's not a real guy. I mean, obviously they wouldn't blow someone up. Another interesting fact I found about this movie was that there was only one female role in the movie. A bunch of Kirk Douglas's troops are hanging out at this bar trying to let off some steam and just, be human for a minute. And this lady comes out and starts singing this German folk song or whatever. And just hearing someone sing and not be shot at for a minute brings everyone to tears. So it's a moving scene. But the interesting thing is that the lady singing would end up marrying Stanley Kubrick and would be his wife until the rest of his life. So there you have it. That was my first time watching Paths of Glory. It was a very powerful movie, very emotional, had a very strong anti-war message. I would not watch this if you're having a bad day, because it's not a happy movie. There's no silver lining, that light at the end of the tunnel, that's a train coming to run you over. That being said, it's a great movie. The acting all around was great, especially by Kirk Douglas. The bad guy, General Moreau, he was despicable, he was evil, played that part perfectly. The locations were cool. They filmed this in Europe at an actual giant palace, an actual farmer's field they tore up. There's no green screen like nowadays. I would say it's not for everyone, for every situation. You know, I can't see this being like, get your guy friends over and put on Paths of Glory and have a great time. I mean, maybe some people do. But, you know, if I were going to do that with a Kubrick movie, it would be like Clockwork Orange. If you've stuck around this long, thank you. I appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.